After we have the First Lady of Florida come join us on stage for a little bit of conversation. All right. Well, you're back in your old stomping grounds. Any reflections as a graduate of College of Charleston?
I remember, so I was born in Ohio, and I grew up there, and I remember the weather that we have outside is exactly like what I experienced when I visited South Carolina from Ohio when I was looking at colleges. I got off the plane, and it was 75 and sunny, and there were palm trees, and I'm like, you can go to college in places like this? And so I know I'm not the only Ohioan that has done this, who's come from Ohio down to South Carolina, but it was so great. So my parents were in Ohio, and they kept coming down to Charleston because they wanted to, visit me, but secretly they were falling in love with Charleston as well. So my dad ended up moving down here, working for MUSC, and then my sister, who is a C-17 Air Force pilot, and her husband, who is also a C-17 Air Force, they ended up moving down here. So the whole family was in Charleston for a good time. And I'll tell you what, as he has learned, you can never go hungry in Charleston. Some of the best restaurants, wherever you go, you just have to wait 4 months for a reservation, but once you schedule it, it's good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I had not spent much time prior to us meeting, and we were dating, and I was active duty in the Navy at the time, and we did have this was before, I think, the Joint Base. They were just in the process of doing what they have now. So I did come up for the Navy at one point, but then we would come up and we'd spend a lot of time, and really great area, and a really great state, and so we're happy to be back. Tell them, so we got elected 2018. We had a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old when we got into office. We had a third child while governor right at the beginning of COVID. So this is the first child born in the governor's mansion, I think, in like 60 years. So now we have 3. She fought and defeated breast cancer during the first term, which is not easy to do. Really served as an inspiration for a lot of people. And so you would think, like, being a mother, having to go through that, all these other things, that would be, that you'd have your hands full. But she's also done all these great initiatives as First Lady that have really made a difference throughout the state of Florida. So can you tell everybody about kind of what you've been able to do with Hope Florida, Pathway to Prosperity, and how you're not content to just let these government bureaucracies continue to fall in their face, but actually do something that would work for a change?
Right. And while you were saying that about the 6'5" and the 3-year-old, I just had a flashback, and I don't know if any of you were at the Tampa Moms for Liberty event down there, because I ended up doing an interview with Tina, but I thought it was going to be the most wonderful idea of why would you not invite the 5-year-old to come up and sit on your lap while you do the interview? It seemed like a great thing to do at the time. So anyway, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about it as having a minor flashback, and I was like, this is actually great. I can make subject and verb agree without having to worry about somebody who, by the way, during that interview was literally tugging on my shirt sleeve because she had to go to the bathroom. So moms, you get it. Okay. No, but listen, when the governor was first elected, 2018, 2019, I didn't want to be that proverbial potted plant that was mentioned a moment ago. You have the opportunity to be able to make a difference, and when you're given that opportunity, what do you do with it? And so I was very fortunate and very humbled as the First Lady of the state of Florida to go travel around and get a lot of key stakeholders together, and so I did that particularly in the child welfare sphere. So I went up into Northeast Florida, I went Northwest Florida, into Miami, we went to Orlando, and I noticed one thing in particular everywhere that we went. There were wonderful people who were doing wonderful things, helping children and families, but they were all siloed. You had nonprofits over here, you had the faith community over here, you had local government over here, you had state government over here, and then you had the private sector over here doing great things, but there was very little communication and collaboration as it pertained to the best interests of people in need who were coming into the quote government. So we were looking at it. How do we reanalyze the situation? How can we help these people? Because I would also get questions when I was out doing press conferences or what have you, and people would often say, well, spending is X per capita on X issue, as if you spend more money, then that secretly means that you're going to have success in the issue. But it's like the law of diminishing returns. Sometimes when you're throwing more money at the problem, it just gets worse. You have to think differently about how we can help people. And one of the things that we wanted to do was, how do we corral and organize all of the support that we know that's there to be able to put people on a path, in this case, on a path to prosperity and economic self-sufficiency. So we launched officially in late 2021 something called Hope Florida, Pathway to Prosperity and Economic Self-Sufficiency. And what that is, those are people within our Department of Children and Families, and that's where we're helping single moms, primarily kids aging out of the foster care system, adoptive families, moms who are pregnant, battling substance abuse. They're coming into that agency, and we created Hope Navigators. Now, they have some interesting roles, one of which is to find all of the support at the community level, particularly the nonprofits. So instead of coming in, and what a lot of these folks would say, they say, yes, there's government assistance that can help you. Maybe there's a TANF grant, there's SNAP benefits. What they would do is look outside and beyond government to see what nonprofits are serving the particular needs of a single mom in need. And what's fascinating about what we've done is that if that nonprofit doesn't exist, we, for the first state in the nation, have really tapped into the faith-based community in a meaningful way. We utilize a technology called Care Portal, and what that is, these Hope Navigators can input into a system the needs of that single mom. So if she's calling in and talking to her Hope Navigator and she says, I'm having a hard time putting food on the table, I need bunk beds and mattresses, and I just can't make this work, can you help me? What that navigator will do will input that into a system, and our participating churches across the state will get a real-time alert in the form of an email or in an app, and they will see it, click it, and say, yes, we can do that. And they will deliver to her front doorstep beds, mattresses, and food. We have found that those inputs into the system only typically happen once, 80% of the time. But you're thinking, well, certainly the single mom has more needs than just bunk beds and mattresses. But what government has done has facilitated a connection now between the community, the faith-based organizations who were always doing wonderful things, but never knew that single mom was over there because they were in different silos. So we've taken down the silos, made the connection, and then government gets out of the way, because we want government to get out of the way. It's not a top-down approach. It's how can we facilitate and maximize the goodwill of great people. But it doesn't end there, because we're trying to get folks on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency, to live up to their God-given potential, and ultimately accomplish the American dream. And so we've tapped into, in particular, one of the things that he has done. He has invested with the legislature $70 million in the Fatherhood Initiative, because we have found one of the most wonderful things you can do for children, particularly of a single mom who's trying to work a job, who's trying to take care of her kids, who's trying to do a million things. If you can provide mentorship to her children, that is the biggest game changer. There's an agency in state government called the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we're very fortunate because we have kids who have gone through the system, they have gotten in trouble with the law, they have gone through very difficult beginnings, they've been abused and neglected, but they come through this Youth Ambassador program through DJJ because they've accomplished great things. They're the first kids in their family to go to school, to go to college, they're class presidents, they're running businesses, they're entrepreneurs, and I ask every single one of them the same question when I see them. I said, what was it that made you turn your life around? How did you get to the governor's mansion, given what you've gone through? And they all, in essence, give me the exact same answer. They said, someone at some point took an interest in my life and gave me value. And so what we've tapped into with his Fatherhood Initiative is our Hope Navigators then supply that single mom with all of the mentorship opportunities, saying, hey, at 2.5 miles down the road, there's a great program called Take a Kid Fishing. Would you like your son or daughter to be able to go out, learn how to fish? Or there's a business that's offering mentorship opportunity, and facilitating it. Because again, you could have the greatest programs, the greatest resources in the world, but if you don't know that they exist, what good are they? So that goes back to the Hope Navigator. But again, on this pathway to economic self-sufficiency, so we've also tapped in the Department of Education. There's rapid credentialing, paid apprenticeships, vocational and technical opportunities, a lot of things that are paid for if you know that they're there, and how do you connect the dots? We've also brought in the private sector in a meaningful way, having them sign up to say, hey, listen, that single mom, she might not be able to work for you a traditional 9 to 5, but can you cut her some slack and do a 9 to 3 so that she can pick up her kids from school, she can be there to cook dinner for them, she can help them with their homework? They're like, yeah, we need some good people working for it. We'll facilitate that. And so again, that's a connection that we've been able to make using our navigators. And we've also tapped into things like the Department of Economic Opportunity, and where they have resume writing resources. There's all of these great resources that are there. What we're doing is connecting the dots, getting the heck out of the way, allowing people to live up to their God-given potential by giving them a helping hand, not giving them a top-down approach. And so we've been able to help about 5,000 people transition off of government assistance since we started this in late 2021. And that philosophical approach to government of how we are a convener and a collaborator is now applying to other agencies. We're doing this now for our veterans. We're doing this for the Agency for People with Unique Abilities and Disabilities. We're doing it for our great Elder Affairs Agency in the state of Florida. So there's a lot of great things that we're doing this, but harnessing the horsepower that is already there and providing opportunities for people to live up to their God-given potential. So that's one thing that I have been very privileged as the First Lady, not me, just the position, to be able to do.
Hear, hear. So if you read this, and I don't know how many people have done, but I know that a lot of people have bought it because it was the #1 book in the country for a couple weeks, and I know they didn't like listing me at #1. Trust me. But one of the things that I talk about is we were dating in Northeast Florida. I was in the Navy. I got mobilized to go to Iraq, and so we did that. I was in Coronado, California. I was attached to SEAL Team 1, and then we went over to the sandbox, like Fallujah, Ramadi, all those places. So we came back, and I was like, okay, I'm going to propose when we come back. So that was on my agenda, and I was like, I just need to get through Iraq, and then we're going to get that done. So we did, and I just told her, I said, look, the wedding is really your thing. I was like, I'll just be along. So you kind of figure out what you want to do or whatnot. And so she started kind of, looking for different things and figuring out. I mean, we were in northeastern Florida area. Of course, she was from Ohio. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area. There was a lot of different possibilities. And so one day she comes to me and says, I was talking to my parents, and they were interested in potentially doing the wedding at
Walt Disney World. I remember when this broke in the news, everybody thought it was so scandalous, like DeSantis got married at Disney. Like, yeah, it was great back then, but he had one caveat, though, because he was very gracious. He said, you go do what you want to do. This is your thing. Go for it. That was wonderful. And we grew up coming from Ohio, going to Disney. We had a lot of fun before they went woke, obviously. But there was one caveat. He said, you can do it, however,
no Mickey, Donald Duck, anybody at the wedding ceremony. They actually have a wedding chase. It's really nice, and everything worked out. It was traditional. In fact, you look at our wedding pictures, you wouldn't know that it was anything out of the ordinary. But we're doing that, and then thinking about. So this is almost 15 years ago, and then no one was thinking like that somehow this would end up being something we would be involved with. Going toe to toe with them about gender ideology in kindergarten. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just absurd, but that's just the way life works.
Well, it's so funny because people would say, oh, did you ever see, that the governor was going to be the governor? I'm like, when I first met him, he was a cute guy in the Navy. Like, I fell for the white uniform, right? Like, he was very handsome. He was like Tom Cruise. It was wonderful. So it's like, no. And so you look back, did you ever know that would be happening? No, I didn't think that. By the way, another question that I get all the time is, how did you guys meet? And people would think, oh, we met in college, and no, that did, because I was college at Charleston, he was up in the Northeast. But it's funny, it's in the book, so that's his perspective, right? Because there's every two sides to every story with this one. So the story goes, so Northeast Florida, we were up there, and we both, well, he's a much better golfer than I am, but when I moved to Florida, ultimately for work, I felt like I needed to learn to play golf, right? Because it's like living in Colorado. You just need to learn how to ski. If I'm in Florida, that's just the thing that you do. You play golf. So I would go to the driving range, and I was not very good. I was hooking and shanking and all of this stuff. But one of those days I went out there, and this was a place that has gotten better over the years, but it was one of those places where you're hitting off of carpet. You can go get like a beer and a bucket of balls. And so somebody had graciously, or for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't gracious, they just ran out of time, had left a bucket of balls behind me, right? So if you're sitting in your little station, right, if you've ever been to a driving range, you got your station here, there's a station there, and then he, which I wasn't really looking at him, was right over here. Well, I kept looking over my shoulder because I wanted the bucket of balls. That was like gold on a driving range, right? So there was like $8. I mean, I needed a lot of help, so I kept looking over my shoulder, and so, he thought.
I thought she was looking at me. And so I went in and I started talking to her, and I offered her the rest of the balls, and we ended up going out and started dating, and everything was great. But I think, for the record, regardless of what I thought, she was looking over her shoulders and she was eyeing the bucket of balls. She was not eyeing me. I mean, so that's just the reality.
That is true. But we got into a great conversation, and then the rest is history after that. We actually went out and had a beer at like Beef O'Brady's, which was so funny. I had never done that before, but I followed him in his car and we went to Beef O'Brady's. Listen, when I'm out and about, and I talked about going to the Moms for Liberty event, and we did a lot for moms when we did the re-election for the governor. We actually signed up 1.1 million mamas for DeSantis, which is the largest mobilizations of moms and grandmoms in support of the governor. And one of the things I kept hearing over and over from moms, whether they were Republican, Independent, Democrat, it didn't matter. It was the woke ideology that was being thrust in front of their children without their consent. These are 5-year-old kids asking them, are you a boy or a girl? And no matter where, it was a bridge, wherever I went in the state of Florida, it was a bridge too far. And so I know a lot of mamas would talk about how proud he stood up for schools, and he talked about the curriculum transparency. But I think this hits us both very hard because we are. I hear a kid crying too, and I'm just thinking I have something that I need to do. It's like, we thought about bringing our kids, by the way, but then we thought if they're crawling out from underneath the stage, it wouldn't be a great thing. And they do travel with us.
Although next week they are going to be at, and this was her idea, and I'm fine, but I mean, so we are actually doing a state trade mission overseas, and so the 6-year-old and the 5-year-old, not the 3-year-old, are going to be accompanying the First Lady and I, and we're going to end up in places like Israel, which is going to be very, very interesting to do that long trek. So we'll see how they behave.
Yes, it's one thing to we brought them to Ohio the other week, which was a lot of fun because that's where I grew up, in Troy, Ohio, and so they were fine. But it's another thing when you're looking at the clock and literally we're flying out there. There is no Sunday. We lose all of Sunday. So as moms and dads, you're thinking like schedule, right? What do you do when you're trying to keep a schedule but you lose an entire day on the calendar? And I think they're like 16 hours or 15 or 14 hours. So we don't know. It could be really good. It could be really bad. But you just kind of do it because you're parents and you kind of roll with the punches a little bit. But back to the parents thing, so many people were appreciative of how you stood so strong for parental rights in education, standing up for good curriculum, ensuring that parents have the right to see that, ensuring that this woke ideology isn't shoved down their throats. And when you're sending kids off to college, making sure that they're getting an education and not an indoctrination. And that is something that I've heard from mamas and grandmamas in particular all across the country, really, in the state.
Yeah, our legislature's still in session, so we've got a lot of priorities, and we've been able to do a lot already, but we got some more stuff. One of the things we're doing, we're just nixing this whole idea of a teacher saying choose your pronouns. Like, we never used to do that, so we're just not going to do it in Florida schools, and we're going to do normal school like everyone did for the whole history of our country until like 2 hours ago. But I think if you look, so with the curriculum transparency and what parents have found in some of these schools, and look, in fairness, in Florida, we have 67 counties, 45 of them didn't have any problems, but some of them did. When you look at some of this stuff, look, people will say like, oh, whatever books are in there should be fine, but it's like you make a choice to curate what's in a library, school library, a classroom, or something like that. Because if you had every book that's ever been printed, that would take up the whole bill. I mean, you couldn't do that. So you have to make choices by definition. So why you would make a choice for a book that would have like this pornographic content using our tax dollars, is just beyond me. And I think even like 5 or 10 years ago, everyone would have said that this is ridiculous, but there's obviously an element of our society who really wants to get this stuff in there and to get this in front of children. And I think it's a very, very bad trend. And I think in Florida, we're really the counterweight to that trend because we're empowering parents. We're making sure the laws are on their side and on the side of protecting kids. But some of the nonsense that's in there, you just wonder, what is going on with some of this stuff. So we're proud to have been to stand up against that and really against people that want to come, because the positions that you're taking for parents' rights and for students, a lot of the media will attack over that, and they really are supporting the left's agenda. I mean, we've seen corporate America, Disney being the most prominent, but there's others that have gotten involved in this. And so these fights, I think, are important. It's not just consumed to whatever happens in the legislature, because you have different institutions in society trying to advance the woke agenda as well. So Florida, we're full spectrum. We fight it everywhere we can, and making sure that we're protecting the freedom of our people. I don't think like you have a truly free state just because you have low taxes, low regulation, and no COVID restrictions if the left is able to impose their agenda through the education system, through the business sphere, and through all these others. A free state means you're protecting your people from the left's pathologies across the board, and that's really what we've done in Florida.
And I know we're short on time. The other thing that a lot of parents are very appreciative of, and you saw him take a stance not too long ago about this, but it was the women in sports, right? And so I grew up, I was a cross-country runner, I was a track, I did basketball, I played soccer when I was younger, I came to the College of Charleston to be on the equestrian team. So sports has been something that has been near and dear to our hearts. We wouldn't have met had it not been for sports. It was golf that brought us together. Now our kids are playing golf in the governor's residence and hitting balls into early 19th century French wallpaper, and it's fine. It's like, although I have like moments where it's the MasterCard commercial, where it's like, this costs this much and this costs that, and this is priceless, at the end of his 4-year term. We're wondering, are we going to get a bill for all of this? Neither here nor there. But sports are really important, and when, I just remember how much grit and determination and sweat and tears and perseverance and hard work that went into whatever craft it was, whatever sport that these girls were taking up. And he mentioned Leah Thomas a second ago. You have these women who have worked their entire lives to get to this point, to ultimately be a national champion or to be up on that podium. And, to have that being taken away from them is really sad. And so when they passed legislation to protect women in sports, I thought that was really great, especially as a mom of a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter who's a little spitfire, mind you, who is doing great in t-ball, by the way, except for, it's so funny, she'll hit the ball and then she'll run to third. And we're like, great, Mamie, go for it, And then she'll play in the dirt in the second inning, but it's okay, she'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of the sports is an important issue, because you're really making a conscious decision, if you allow this to happen, to take away opportunities from girls and from women athletes. I mean, that's just the reality. And we think that's wrong, but that's what's being done. And so it may be, you're running track and field, and you have a girl that comes in second who would have been first if they didn't have the transgender runner, and that's important. But it may be, there may have been the 7th runner or the 8th or 9th who didn't even get into that race because of that. And so it does go on and on down the line. And I think it's really, really important. And you're basically telling these women athletes that, their hard work, is not necessarily going to pay off, because because some people in society are more worried about social engineering and ideology than providing a fair competition. But I think it's even larger than that, just in the sense that if we as a society say that a man that puts on a dress, dresses as a woman, and then, quote, identifies as a woman is actually a woman, that is not true, okay? And so if you're telling me that I have to accept that is a woman, you're asking me to be complicit in a lie. And that I will not do. And so part of this is about, are we going to have a society that's rooted in truth, or are we going to have a society that's unmoored from truth and is basically being swept away with different ideological currents? Because if you're saying that is a woman, you're putting ideology ahead of truth and reason. So yes, the opportunities as the father of two young girls who are both good athletic, important for sure, but it's a larger issue about what type of people we are, and I've never seen a society succeed when they've basically left the truth on the cutting room floor.
I know we're short on time, but he had mentioned a little bit before about my battle and having overcome breast cancer. And I just want to say, though, from the bottom of my heart, because I got a lot of letters from across the country and a lot from right here in South Carolina of people who thought of me in the midst of all of this going on. And I cannot tell you how much that lifts your spirit when you're hearing stories of people saying, you know, I had stage 4, I had 3, 2, 1, I was able to beat it, stay strong, you can do it, stay strong. And that really helps you when you're going through tough times. You know, when I was diagnosed, it was a 4, 3, and 1 at the time. That's how old our babies were. And so just know that I appreciate everything that has come from this community, from people who have sent well wishes in those letters. And it actually inspired us so much that we started a cancer collaborative. And there's many facets to it. But one of the things is trying to put all of that forward-facing positivity to other people. Why should I be the only beneficiary of all these wonderful notes? I know other people would be praying for others who are battling it if they only knew that those folks were out there. So we started Cancer Connect, where people can put up their inspirational stories, they can post letters, they can talk about their journey, they can have their stories of how they were able to persevere and find the resources that they need to be able to get through tough times. And so just know how forever grateful I am for all of the prayers. I know a lot of people were praying for us.
Absolutely. And look, I'm the husband. People say I have to say this, but this is true. So we did a family photo, January of 2019, first day as governor, at the desk. I had Madison, too, on my lap. She stood next. I was sitting at the desk. She was next to me with Mason, who was only 9 months at the time. Fast forward 4 years. You know, we have another child. She goes through breast cancer. Had COVID, a bunch of different issues that we just had to deal with, which was a topsy-turvy administration. I have Madison, who's then 6 on my lap. I've got Mamie, who didn't exist in 2019, who's 2 on the other lap, and then I've got Casey standing there with Mason, who was at the time 4. And so we put both pictures up in like an Instagram or one of these social media posts and say, you know, 4 years later, whatever. And she was prettier in 2019 than she was in 2023 than she was in 2019. I almost messed that up. So how you go through all that 4 years and come out prettier in the end, I don't know, but it's true. And I challenge you to look at those photos. You will not come to any other conclusion.
I will say this. He has become a much better sweet talker in the last 4 years, if anything is true. No, but it's very kind.
Thank you all. God bless. If you have some books, we'll sign some.